It's Thursday, April 18th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, we learn more about PFAS and how the town of Barnstable keeps our public drinking water safe today and in the future. PFAS, per and polyfluoral alkali substances, are among the most ubiquitous man-made chemicals in the world. Approximately 98% of Americans have PFAS in their bodies. While their strong chemical bonds make them very effective at repelling water and oil even at high temperatures, these same characteristics also make PFAS extremely persistent, meaning they don't break down. People can be exposed to these chemicals from direct contact with products, through the air they breathe, or through food they eat. They can also be exposed through drinking water. Town Manager Mark Ells joins us in studio for another deep dive. Town Manager is back. We're talking water again. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
So there's lots of things going on with water. We hear about it at town council meetings. We hear about it in the newspaper. We hear about it from you. But this new emerging contaminants and the PFAS issue is really coming to the forefront of discussions now. And my question to you today is, if there is a change from our last discussion of standards, how does the town actually manage something like that? When standards are suddenly changed, they're not sudden, obviously, they go through things with the state. How is the town going to manage changes like that?
Excellent question. You know, it's funny, I had that question from one of our customers during the rate hearings that we did this year. I had it from a former, the former board of our water board, our Hyannis Water Board, and you know, we've recognized that there are multiple ways to manage the issue of what you do when you see that resource of the existing wells, you know, somehow challenged. And PFAS is absolutely a challenge for all of us. And so what we've done already is town council gave us an appropriation to go forward with an alternatives analysis looking at how do you manage this issue. And what we've done is we've really broken it into 3 parts. And we look at the existing wells and what we need to do with those wells. Now, a lot of people will say, the system was built over 100 years ago. And when they built this system and they put in these wells, there wasn't an urban area immediately up gradient. There wasn't a fire training academy or an airport. There wasn't a lot. This was kind of a wooded area where you sited these wells, and now it is not. And we know that putting an urban area or up gradient of a down gradient receptor, in this case a water supply well, is going to present its challenges. And with these emerging contaminants, they're even greater challenges. And so, but you go to where the source exists, and you say, what can I do there? Can I rehabilitate it? Can I put filters on it? So we've gone through that exercise. And so for our system, we know what we need to do at every well, so that we have a no detect in every well. We've done it at the Mary Dunn wells, we're doing it at the Mar wells, and we have another field down on the southwest side of the system where next Thursday night we're going to be asking for the funds to do the study and design permitting for that location. So we've done that piece. Another piece is looking at interconnects with abutting systems, and we've done that. And we physically interconnected with Yarmouth and with Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, and at this point we have not done an interconnect with the Barnstable water, which is the fire district that's in Barnstable Village. And that's mainly because they have capacity. I think they've got a couple of zones with pressure, so there's a couple of technical differences that create you know, them less able to just interconnect, but we'll always continue to work with them, and if we can help them or if they can help us, we will certainly do that. So we've done that one. Third piece is looking at where we might put future potential water supply. So you've heard me now for 2 years at Town Council talk about the Fish and Wildlife parcel. It's the 250
Right.
acres immediately to the west-northwest, east-northeast of the Hyannis water system. And that's basically in between Mary Dunn Road and Willow Street.
Okay.
That big chunk of land there. And so we've made progress there, and hopefully we're going to have a sign off by the commissioner so that we can go out and put test wells in. But it isn't limited to that site. We've looked at that site. We've looked at the county farm site, and part of the settlement that we had with the county, if you remember, there was a lawsuit between
Right.
the county and the town because of the fire training academy. Well, part of that was a second agreement that says we can go on there and put test wells in and see if that 100+ acre parcel is viable for a future potential water supply. We're also looking at parcels all the way out to the West Barnstable Conservation Land.
Okay.
We're going to move forward with this effort. We're going to look to site test wells to look at quantity and quality on all 6 of these areas, all the way on the west side from the West Barnstable Conservation Lands, on the east side to the Fish and Wildlife property, and the others in between. So you're going to be hearing more and more about this. Now, right away, questions will come up about that's not where the Hyannis water system is located. Well, this is the town of Barnstable. And what I've talked to the council about doing is reinstituting the Water Quality Advisory Committee, which was a town-wide, almost regional look at water supply. So we would work with Mashpee and Sandwich and our own town and all the water purveyors, and with Yarmouth and the county and the state, and begin to talk about water supply, but within Barnstable, certainly the boundaries of our own community, all of the different water supplies and how they interact. And at this point, more importantly, where we might put future water supplies. Because when you back away from this issue, you really begin to say, okay, urbanized areas, you probably don't want to site any new water supply wells down gradient of urbanized areas.
Right.
Doesn't matter if there's sewer or not, even though sewer would allow for the centralization of that and the control of it. But the problem is they don't regulate these emerging contaminants from sewage either. So that's another regulatory issue that we have. So by locating it in areas that aren't down gradient of urbanized areas, that's a positive thing. That's why Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, for example, actually most of the other water purveyors in town don't have a lot of urbanized environment up gradient of their wells.
Right.
Hyannis does.
Are they testing for that PFAS?
I can't speak specifically. I believe that they do have requirements to test for PFAS. I believe those requirements are different than the requirements that we have in regularity and the number of samples.
Okay.
So it is different. So as the DEP unfolds whatever its plan is for PFAS, the sampling requirements may change as well for everybody, and that may change this discussion dramatically depending on what the findings of that are.
Right.
But right now, given what we know, we're moving forward with that. And the question that I really got was, well, you're not doing anything along these lines. And actually, we got the money in 2017, and we're planning on going out and putting these test wells in this summer. It takes a while to get there.
Right.
It took time. We selected a consultant to work with us. It took time to prepare the report. We've moved forward with implementation of 2 of those pieces. We have the physical interconnects with both in place. We have filters either in place or in the process of being installed. Now the last piece is these future potential water supplies. And I went to Boston, I think I told you in my last conversation, to meet with the commissioner and deputy commissioner of Department of Environmental Protection, asking for an expedited permitting process, because typically it takes years to site a well. We feel that given the challenge that we have here on the Cape, and certainly here in Barnstable and in the village of Hyannis, we need an expedited process. So let's figure out the critical path to get from testing to tying into the distribution system, and let's make this happen in a shorter time frame as possible. And they recognize this, and they said, okay, we'll work with you on it. It's going to open up broad discussions in our community.
Right.
Citing a public water supply in West Barnstable that might service Hyannis is a big discussion for our
Right.
community.
And just to bring it back a little bit, so the EPA had a webinar earlier this month talking about that they were going to come out with their standards, but it looks like Massachusetts has recognized this as a really a much faster piece that they're going to put standards of their own in as the Commonwealth rather than wait for the feds.
Absolutely. I think it could happen in days.
Really?
That's how imminent this is.
Right.
Now, what happens? See, that's the other confusion point, because the Office of Research Standards is really looking at, do they have health concerns about these emerging contaminants? So in general, they can say yes. At what level, over what period of time, and what affected group? Because they're all different. In the case of these PFAS, it's over a duration, and it's exposure to a limited group, and then there are limited health effects to it. It doesn't minimize that. That's important that they've identified that. And so I think the state of Massachusetts has said, hey, we know this exists. There's no reason not to proceed with this. So let's have a health advisory. Then the next step, and they said they were looking to adopt a health advisory formally by July of 19 is what I have heard from them. So now we move to, so what's next? Well, drinking water wells are regulated under MCLs. So it's a drinking water standard. And so they would hold a draft hearing and then a final hearing, and then they would adopt, and then they would allow time for compliance. So that is when you might not be compliant with drinking water regulations. That takes, from now till then, you're looking at a year or more. So I think what Massachusetts is saying is, we know the outcome we want, and so let's get moving on this. We have no disagreement with that at all. I think that the practical time frames that they have in place, and some of their regulations on the upper end of this, meaning when you have a point source, I think the regulators, because the issues with the Fire Training Academy, the control there is with the county and the state.
Right.
And we've intervened, and we've said, clearly we've said, shouldn't be there, we don't want it there, no more activity there, and then it needs to be cleaned up. And we'll work with you toward that end. We will be supportive. And then we've responded at our well sites by putting filters on our wells to make sure that what's released from that site is non-detectable in the system. And at the Mary Dunn wells, we've achieved that. So go back. I think the regulators are also looking at, okay, how are we going to manage these point sources and make sure that they're not part of the bigger picture of this cycle of water. And they're going to need to relook at that. They're going to need to relook at it right here in the town of Barnstable. And so we have those discussions going with them as well. And I feel like we're progressing toward all that we've just discussed in a positive way. And we, in the end, have the same outcomes, protection of public health and safety. It's just a matter of how do you get there, and what's the time frame to get there. That's what's really critical. And to not panic the public if there isn't a need to communicate in a way that creates that sort of feeling. That's all.
There's more information coming. I'm sure we'll have a few more discussions as the state
and
gets
coming
everything
weeks,
in.
and I really want to get these PSAs out there for these public service announcements for people, so that they, you know, a lot of people have said to me, they had a, rather than Teflon, in, I was talking to a fellow who had some heart surgery with a valve, and some parts have titanium and others have you know, Teflon, and he has the titanium, so he was reading something and he said to me, geez, I'm glad I didn't have the other. Well, that's not regulated. And it's different, even though it's in the body and it can be circulated through the body. That's kind of part of, they got to look at the whole process of this. You can't just go to the drinking water source as the only point where you're looking at how, for example, PFAS can get introduced into a system. You got to look at where it's coming from. And you got to figure, okay, what do we do there? Do we tell people don't buy those products anymore,
Right.
don't use those products, whatever it might be. So there's other states, because I saw an infomercial the other day with a non-Teflon pan, a non-stick, non-Teflon, and it was flashing at the bottom, PFOS, PFOA free. So,
right.
and that was a result, and then I kind of started looking into it, and it's because the state where those were being sold had regulations in place. So
Right.
people want to know, I don't want to buy that product if ultimately it's going to end up somewhere where I don't want it to be, in me or
Right.
in our drinking water. So,
Right, which, brings up landfills and everything like that.
Absolutely.
This particular chemical is ubiquitous in our lives at this
Yes.
point in time.
Yes, it is. It's something that's regular in what we use every day. And until now, parts per million or billion, you needed a point source. Now at parts per trillion, you don't need a lot of this into the system to create challenges.
Right. Well, we're up for the challenges, and like I said, we'll have more conversations, so everybody stays informed.
I'll be here to share what I know.
Excellent. Thanks,
Okay?
Mark.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about emerging contaminants, last summer we went to the Maher Wellfield to talk with Water Supply Division Supervisor Hans Kaiser to learn more about the design and installation of a water filtration system for emerging contaminants. We're here at the Maher Wellfield with Hans Kaiser, who is the Hyannis Water Supervisor. Hans, this is some good news. The monies to really redesign this wellfield has been passed through Town Council. You're ready to go.
Yes, we are. We're happy with that, and definitely thanks to the Town Councilor that all of them voted for this project, and also the Hyannis Water Board was in full support of this project. And what we're designing here and going to build is a filtration plant, which is actually in addition to the existing facilities, because we're planning to, with this facility, to take out the iron and manganese out of the water. We're planning to take the 1.4 dioxin contaminant out of the water, and the PFOS type of contaminants. So there's a lot that this new facility needs to do.
So with the new facility coming on, let's just back up a little bit. So this isn't just something we decided to do 3 years ago. This project kind of had, pen to paper looking, because these contaminants were in the water and they're not easily removed.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We discovered these contaminants in the water. They're what I call the emerging contaminants. They're not regulated yet. The federal government, EPA, required us to do sampling and testing for these contaminants in 2014, 2015. We discovered 1.5 dioxin and up in the Mary Dunn area, PFOS, PFOA contaminants. Mary Dunn, we dealt with that with activated carbon, and over here we ended up shutting down one well and building an interconnection with the town of Yarmouth Water Department and mixing the two waters, and in that way diluted it enough that it's safe to drink and under the health advisory levels. But long term, it's really not a good situation, because dilution is not really the preferred action in our judgment. And the other issue is, if you spend close to $1 million a year on purchasing water from Yarmouth, that's a lot of money. And the other issue is, if there's a problem in Yarmouth, I mean, their first priority is their own customers, which I can understand. It's just not a secure and safe option for the ratepayers in Hyannis. So what we did is we went with a preliminary design option to see what our options were for removal of these contaminants. Last summer we did a pilot testing sequence where we had some trailers out right in front here that actually had the testing equipment that mimicked what the final equipment would be and would do, and to make sure that our water actually gets run to this testing equipment and then just make sure that it actually works. And that was fairly successful and also eye-opening, because we were originally planning to do the cabin filtration units first and then later on take care of the UV. But come to find out, during this pilot testing, we couldn't do that. We had to do everything at the same time. So that's where we're doing, that's where we're planning to move forward with.
Right.
And right now the design is about at the 50% stage, so we're moving right ahead.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about the design stage. You know, I'm a science geek here, and what I understand from you is that your staff and your engineers are really involved in this process, because eventually they're going to have to manage it and or repair it once it's done. So give us a little indication of how you worked with the design company and how important that is.
We basically give them a general outline of what we need and why. They put something on paper as an initial design, and then we get together with operations, in this case the Suez operators. We have a whole bunch of DPW personnel involved, and the engineers. We hash out all the operational issues. Startup, if something breaks down, how do you fix it? Do we have enough valves, enough piping in place to bypass things, to blow off like wastewater, etc. It's quite an intense process.
So this particular site here eventually is, this back open site here is where this is going to go. Kind of walk us through the timeline of what's going to happen from now, since the money's been appropriated, to when this new well field is going to come online, the new station.
It's quite a process. We're planning to submit to DEP for financial and technical approval design plans and bid specs in October this year. Hopefully we'll get approval by the end of November, and then go out to bid in December, January timeframe. Pick a designer, sorry, not a designer, a contractor, and we have to deal with filed sub-bids because of the way the construction works. So we hope to break ground in the spring of 2019, construct all through the summer, all through the winter, and have the plant online before the summer of 2020.
Wow, that's an aggressive timeline.
We have to.
We have to, right. So,
yes.
You know, water, I don't think, well, I do think that most people know about water quality, but it's really important that, since this is a municipal-owned water department, that you're always constantly thinking about the residents who are consuming this water, and that, you know, a lot of the things that you do here are really literally for the residents.
Yep, that's absolutely the case.
Okay, so it's all designed, you flip a switch and it goes online?
No, it's not that easy. There's a lot of sampling, testing, adjusting, fine-tuning, which is going to take probably a couple of months. And then the DEP needs to come through the facility, they do their testing, and then if they're satisfied, they will approve and sign off on the facility. And only after we get that final approval can we actually go online. Okay. So it's still quite a process. The interesting part about this facility is it's going to be the first facility of this kind in Massachusetts.
Really?
So it is the fact that we are going to be treating not only iron and manganese, which is kind of standard, but the fact that we're also going to remove emerging contaminants, PFAS, PFOA, and 1.4 dioxin it's the first in the state of Massachusetts.
Right. And these emerging contaminants, this is just starting to come to the forefront within the DEP and some of the other agencies here. Touch upon, you know, these aren't regulated yet. We don't know what these contaminants may or may not do.
Well, we got a pretty good idea because of the health advisory and the health issues that are being researched. The issue is the EPA and Mass DEP, up till shortly, didn't really have a good sense of the safe levels of these contaminants in the drinking water. On top of that, the laboratory techniques and equipment that is out there now that wasn't out there 10, 15 years ago makes it possible to detect these compounds to very, very minute levels. 10, 20 years ago, you just wasn't possible to do that. But with that also comes the next set of questions that is more philosophical in the sense that, you know, what's the right level and what's not, because before that you couldn't measure it, now you can, but what do you do with that information? Right. And the town of Barnstable, especially DPW, we basically caution on the side of safety, because we think that it's important to provide maximum safety for our residents, and not try to minimalize things.
So is this facility being the first of its kind in Massachusetts,
yes,
you can actually bring back data to some of these agencies with these emerging contaminants?
Yes, we do. And actually, we also work right now with not only the Silent Spring Institute, but also the Harvard University, the School of Public Health, and in Rhode Island, the School of Public Health in Rhode Island. Work with them together with the STEEP program to get the research done and to really get a comprehensive look on what these issues are and how to address them properly.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Hans. Anything else
You're
you want to
welcome.
tell anybody?
No, basically the water is safe and to drink. I drink it every day. And we just keep on moving forward and making sure that the water is safe and fight for clean and safe drinking water right in here in Hyannis. And that's quite a challenge, but we're up to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you, I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.